The quickest way to deploy a self-hosted copy of Cerb is as a container from our official Docker Hub repository. There are pre-built images for each version, so you can spin up a copy or upgrade in seconds. You'll need a container platform like Docker, Podman, Containered, Kubernetes, or Amazon ECS Fargate. A simple option for testing on your local machine is Docker Desktop, which you can find at docker.com/desktop. The Cerb container is built on top of the official PHP FPM container. To use it, you need to pair it with a fast CGI-compatible web server like Caddy or Nginx. We prefer Caddy because it's easy to configure, and it automatically manages free Let's Encrypt SSL certificates for you. You can start with one of our Docker Compose examples on GitHub. In this example, we'll assume you're using Docker Desktop on your local machine, and you already have the git command installed. Download our Docker examples into any directory by typing the command git clone https://github.com/serb/serb-docker. Then change into the Cerb Docker directory. There are two subdirectories with a Docker Compose stack containing Cerb, a web server, and a MySQL database server. Change into the Cerb-caddy MySQL directory. The .env file contains the environment variables used to configure the containers. For testing, you can leave Cerb_version at the default of latest, which will use the latest stable version. In production, you should pin this to a specific version, like 11.1.0, to avoid unintentional upgrades. The Cerb_hostname variable configures the hostname you'll use to access Cerb from your web browser. When testing, you can keep the localhost default, but in production, you should use a domain name that routes its DNS to your server or load balancer. By default, the web server will use port 80 for HTTP and 443 for SSL. With a real domain, port 80 is used by Caddy to answer challenges when automatically renewing SSL certificates. If these ports are already in use on your machine, you can change them to something like 8080 and 8443. The MySQL variables configure the database credentials. You can use the defaults for testing. In production, you should use a database service like Amazon Aurora, which will provide you with an endpoint and credentials. The Docker Compose.yml file defines three containers: Caddy, Cerb, MySQL, and a couple of Docker volumes for persistent storage. It links the environment variables to each container. Docker Compose is suitable for testing, but in production, you'd use task definitions and a shared file system, like EFS, for the volumes. In production, you'd also omit the MySQL container. A platform like AWS Fargate or Kubernetes will let you scale traffic to multiple containers and automatically replace containers that fail health checks. Since our example is a local copy for testing, we'll also leave everything in this file at the defaults. To start the containers, type the command docker compose up. This will only take a few seconds. Afterward, you can open your web browser to the host name you configured earlier, localhost by default. If you used localhost, a self-signed certificate is generated for SSL, so you'll need to manually accept it in your browser first. If this is a new copy of Cerb, it will start the guided installer. The first step checks the requirements, which should always be met since we pre-configured the image for you. Click Continue at the bottom. The next step shows the software license agreement, which is pretty standard stuff. We retain the copyright, and you have a perpetual right to use and copy it, but not to slap a new name on it and resell it. Click the I accept button. The installer will then initialize the database. This usually only takes a few seconds, but may take longer depending on your machine. Afterward, you'll be prompted to create an account with your name, email, and password. This should be a valid email address so you can recover your account, but it doesn't have to be. You can use something like admin@cerb.example during testing. At the bottom, you need to enter the first email address that will route to Cerb. In testing, outgoing email is disabled by default, so you can use something like support@cerb.example. Click the Continue button when done. If you're testing, select Demo mode. This will enable the tutorial and add a bunch of time-saving sample data, like fake customers and email conversations. You can easily remove the sample data before moving into production. Click the Continue button. Now click the Login and Get Started link at the bottom. Sign in with the email address and password you provided during installation. You'll start on the tutorial workspace, which gives you a tour through all of Cerb's functionality. If this server is publicly accessible, You should shut down the containers with Ctrl+C, edit the .env file, and disable the serb_install variable. Then restart the containers again with the command docker compose up. This prevents further access to the install path. When you're done testing, you can stop the containers with Ctrl+C. You can permanently delete the containers and volumes with the command docker compose -- volumes. To get started with Cerb, check out our other videos or visit cerb.ai in your browser.